Hey y'all. All right, so tonight's video, sorry, my shirt's being all crazy. Tonight's video is going to be a little bit different because it's not specifically an answer to a member question, but is more of an insight that I've been wanting to talk about almost since I started this group. I'm not sure how this is going to go. My puppy is here and he's a little bit crazy. Everyone say hi to Riley. You see Riley? That's our dog. That's our new puppy. He's only 10 weeks old, and he's a little crazy. Right now, I don't know what the deal is. At night, Golden Doodles get the zoomies, and he's been kind of crazy. So hopefully he will behave and let me talk, right? Okay, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so tonight I wanted to talk about honoring your child's unique self. And this is really more of a parenting thing, I guess, in general than a homeschooling thing. But as I've talked about before, homeschooling is just an extension of parenting. So your parenting philosophy, your parenting practices are going to have a very significant impact on how you homeschool. And this is kind of one of those overarching philosophies, ideas that is going to affect both your parenting and your homeschooling very significantly. Oh, here we go. Shh, quiet, buddy. As parents, it is, kind of human nature to try to mold our children to who we want them to be, particularly if our children are not easily relatable to us, because they are so different. As I've mentioned before, I have two kids, two girls. We always say that my oldest is my husband's mini-me, and our youngest is my mini-me. My youngest looks like me. She's very similar to me. I get her in a lot of ways. I'll be completely honest, I don't always get my older daughter. She is, in fact, I'd say most of the time, she's a huge mystery to me. I have no idea what's going on in her head. I have no idea what motivates her. I have no idea what her interests are. She's a very intensely private person, and I can't relate. And I have found myself over the years, dog's chewing a pen. Not for you, buddy. I have over the years found myself very often trying to shove her into a box that makes her more understandable to me. And I'm realizing the older that she gets, she's fighting against this, and well, she should, because if someone was trying to shove me in a box, I'd be fighting back too. And there's no reason why a child should not also fight back against that, because it's an affront to who you are as a unique person to have somebody try to turn you into something you're not. But when we try to do this as parents, we get ourselves in trouble in a couple different ways. First of all, we can really wreck our relationship with our kids. And obviously it's kind of hard to parent if we are, if we're not setting ourselves up to have a good relationship with our kids. I know that the older my girls get, the more I want to make sure they are comfortable talking to me about anything. I never want them to feel like they have to cover anything up, or they have to hide anything, or they need to, or they feel like they can't be honest. And if someone's constantly trying to chisel little bits and pieces off of you to make you something different, then that person isn't going to feel safe. And I want my kids to feel safe with me. I want them to know that they can trust me. I want them to know that I love them for who they are. And if I keep trying to change them, then it doesn't matter how often I say I love you for who you are, my actions prove otherwise. And the way that this really comes into play the most in homeschooling is when we start really thinking about what is going to motivate this child, what is the best for this child, not just what curriculum do I want to use, not just what methodology do I want to use, But what curriculum, what methodology is going to be best for my child? What approach is going to be best for my child? Is homeschooling the right thing for my child? And I know this is a question that every single one of us wonders about and struggles with at times. Am I doing the right thing? And we've talked about this before. Am I doing it right? Can I do this? But the twist on this is that we need to stop thinking about ourselves. Can I? Is this my thing? And really think about, is this what's best for my child? Now, there are absolutely times when we need to homeschool, even if it's not what our child wants, because the conventional school environment is toxic in one way or another. Sometimes you have to play the mom card, right? The parent card, and just say, I know this isn't really what you want, but it's what we're going to do anyway, right? I don't believe in giving children complete 100% autonomy because the logic center of their brain and their frontal lobe has not fully developed. They cannot fully think through the consequences of their actions, the long-term ramifications of what they do, of what their choices are. They can't access that higher level of thinking where they recognize, okay, I might not want to do this, but I know it's the best thing for me. I mean, there are adults who still can't do that. So we certainly can't expect children to do that, right? So while I do think children should have a say in certain decisions, particularly like how they're going to be educated, or even, what curriculum they use, what methodology you use, particularly when they're older. Really, the final say comes down to what you as the parent have to say. It really is your final decision. And sometimes we need to admit that even though what we want more than anything in the world is to homeschool, or on the flip side, more than anything, the last thing we want to do is homeschool, we recognize that it's what we have to do for our kids. Or as I started saying, maybe the thing we want to do most is homeschool, but it's not the right choice for our children. And we have to finally let go of that and say, as much as I want to do this, I know this is not going to be a good fit for my child. So the older your child gets and the more opinionated they become, the more into themselves they grow, the more developed their sense of self becomes, and everything that comes with it, their sense of style, their sense of taste, their sense of, their personality, their sense of humor, their, all these different things. The more we as parents need to step back and take our hands off a little bit more, and give them space to become who they are meant to be. And our job over time really becomes that of almost like a mentor, a life mentor, and less of somebody who is trying to direct them and steer them. And sometimes for some kids, you have to do this in kind of like a sneaky ninja way, where you don't say, oh, I think the best thing for you in this situation would be to blah, blah, blah. Because there's some personalities, and it really comes down to personality. There's certain personalities that take very well to instruction. They want to be instructed. There are certain personalities, the last thing they want is for you to tell them what to do. And so with those personalities, you kind of have to be sneaky about it. And so you don't exactly tell them what to do. It's more like you talk about, and you even have to be sneaky in how you bring this up. But you say, man, when I was your age, I went through this whole crazy thing where blah, 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 something that's kind of parallel to what they're dealing with. Sorry, my dog is like trying to go out, but not really. Are you going out, buddy? No? I'm going to close the door. Okie dokie. And the best thing that I did in that situation, or the worst thing, I made the worst decision. Oh my gosh, I decided to handle it by doing blah, blah, blah. Instead of telling your child, now the worst thing you could do is to do blah, blah, blah. Hopefully this is making sense. You could draw parallels to your own life. You kind of teach, a friend of mine calls it teaching parallel. Instead of teaching them directly, you need to do this, you need to think about this, blah, blah, blah. Instead, we create almost like a parallel situation, or we talk about a time when we went through something similar, and we just talk about how we handled it. Not so at the end we can finish it by saying, and you should do that too, or, and I hope you don't do what I did. But just to say, oh yeah, I've totally been where you are. I went through the exact same thing. Oh my gosh, I was 14 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I did blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh, can you believe it? And then move on. And it's like you're planting little seeds of wisdom and direction without grabbing them and turning them around and saying, go this way. And the further on you go with homeschooling and parenting, the more we have to realize that it's this kind of subtle directing through analogy, through narrative, through personal anecdote that can sometimes be the most powerful. Because by not telling them exactly what they need to do or what you think they should do, you're showing them that you're going to trust them to do their best in this situation, to try to figure it out. And of course, there are going to be times when you as a parent absolutely need to step in and say, no, not doing it this way. Sorry. But more often than not, we need to step back and let them try things and let them fall flat on their faces and let them learn those natural consequences. Because once they get out in the world, they have to have that ability to completely flop without wallowing in the mire of their own mistakes. They need to learn how to flop, but then get back up and go, well, that did not work. How am I going to do it differently? What else should I have done? And problem solve and figure out how to move on with life and figure out how not to let this become like the most horrible thing they've done or some defining mistake in their life or whatever. Help them to learn that, you know what? People screw up and then they learn to move on and they learn how to do better next time. And there are going to be times when we are going to be very, very, very tempted to want to sit them down and say, no, this is not what you should do. This is what you should do instead. But particularly with those certain personalities, we need to keep our mouth shut and we need to let them learn on their own, because that's the only way they're truly going to learn the lesson. If we keep hammering it and hammering it and hammering it, they're just so irritated that someone would try to tell them what to do, that they're just hyper-focused on that, and they're not actually learning the lesson. And so sometimes we just have to stand back and say, okay, natural consequences, baby. Enjoy that. Figure it out on your own. When they're in public school, sometimes it means, you don't bring them their lunch that they forgot at home. You don't bring them the homework they forgot at home. In homeschool, we don't get quite as many of those kind of opportunities to let them kind of figure that kind of thing out on their own. But all the more reason why, when we are faced with them, we have to let them do it. We have to let them fail if they're going to fail. We have to just step back and just let things happen however it is that they're going to happen. But circling back around, because I've gotten a little bit off track here, the main thing, though, that I really want to drive home is the idea that we are not given our children so that we can turn them into something we think that they need to be. We're given our children so that we can pass on the wisdom that we've been given, but then let them do with it what they will. And to eventually go on to be the person that they were created to be. And sometimes that's going to be super, super hard because it's not someone that we can relate to. It's not the person we thought they would be. And in the realm of homeschooling, sometimes it means letting go of this this beautiful, rosy idea of what we thought homeschooling would be, and instead embrace the kind of homeschooling that they need it to be, even if it's not what we want to do, even if it's something completely contrary to what we ever would have chosen for ourselves. We have to realize for this child, this is what they need. And it can get kind of tricky when you have multiple kids who need multiple things, who need different things. But it can be done. It can be a little tricky sometimes to navigate. And that's when it can be really handy to work with someone like myself who can help you to figure out how to navigate that stuff. But in the end, we need to realize that the whole reason that we're doing this in the first place is for them. If you're doing it for any other reason than for them, you should maybe kind of rethink why you're doing it in the first place. But if the whole reason that we're homeschooling is to give our children the best, well, the best is going to depend on who they are and what they need. And so we need to give them the space and the freedom to be that person. And as the adult, the more mature one, the wiser one, we need to recognize that sometimes means we are going to have to sacrifice something. Sometimes lots of things. We're going to have to sacrifice time. We're going to have to sacrifice money. We're going to have to sacrifice the dream that we had of what their childhood would be like, or what our relationship with them would be like, or what our homeschooling with them would be like. I can tell you that homeschooling in my house has never once looked the way that I thought it would. Ever. For lots and lots and lots of reasons, only some of which are related to my children. Many of them, frankly, are related to me, because we are not always the person that we want to be either, right? But that doesn't mean that it has been bad. It has just meant that there have been a number of times when I've had to let go of my dream of what I thought things were going to be. And there were many years there. I mean, I as I've mentioned in other videos, I decided I was going to homeschool when I was 20 years old, 21 years old, 22 years old. I had no kids. I had no husband. I was still in college. I was still becoming a teacher, but I already knew I wanted to homeschool. So there were a lot of years there because I didn't have my first until a month before I turned 30. So there was a long time there that I had to think about what homeschooling was going to be like. And let me tell you, it's like, the girl who's been planning her wedding since she was like 9 years old, right? She's got this notebook like this with the ideas and all this stuff. Okay, that was me with homeschooling. And virtually none of what I planned ever happened. And I don't, golly, I hope I'm not scaring anybody off. That's totally not my intent here at all. What I'm trying to do is save y'all the kind of frustration that I had, because for so many years I was holding on to these ideas and almost getting bitter and resentful that I didn't get to homeschool the way I wanted to homeschool. And then I finally, remembered my maturity and remembered, oh yeah, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for my kids. And what my kids need is XYZ, not the ABC that I thought they did. So I tell you this so that those of you that are at the beginning of your journey can learn the lesson sooner than I learned it. That, we don't control our children as much as we often wish we could. But that our whole existence as parents is for us to help them become the best version of themselves, the best version of who they were created to be. And that does mean helping them sometimes file down some of the rougher edges. But it doesn't mean changing their shape. And that can be tricky. It can be a very arduous process. I'm not a parenting coach, because I'm not always the best parent. I certainly don't have all the answers. But the Positive Parenting group that I mentioned. I've got a link on one of the other videos. They're a great place to go to figure out more of this kind of thing. But really, the bottom line comes down to relationship and just letting your kids be who they're meant to be. And I guess that's it. I'll stop rambling. So I hope that was helpful. I sure hope I didn't scare anybody off. But there you have it. I'll just stop while I'm ahead. I'm sorry this was such a late video tonight. It's been a little crazy around here today. But I hope that was beneficial. And I hope y'all have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, take care. Bye.